Columbia continuing toward Florida, now approaching the New Mexico-Texas border. Altitude 40 miles. Speed 13,200 miles per hour. Range to touchdown 1,400 miles. The shuttle in the left bank with wings angled about 57 degrees to horizontal.
And Columbia, Houston, we see your tire pressure messages and we did not copy your last.
Roger,
Columbia out of communications at present with Mission Control as it continues its course toward Florida. Minutes to touchdown for Columbia at the Kennedy Space Center. Flight controllers are continuing to stand by to regain communications with the spacecraft.
Columbia, Houston, comm check. Columbia, Houston, UHF comm check.
Capcom Charlie Hobaugh calling Columbia on the UHF frequency as it approaches the Merritt Island tracking station range in Florida. 12.5 minutes to touchdown according to clocks and mission control.
Columbia, Houston, UHF comm check. Columbia, Houston, UHF comm check.
Flight controllers are standing by for Columbia to move within communications range of the Merritt Island tracking station in Florida. To regain communications with Columbia. Also, flight controller standing by for tracking data of Columbia that also received through the Merritt Island tracking station.
UHF comm check.
Ten and a half minutes to anticipated touchdown for Columbia. Flight controllers are still standing by for C-band tracking data from the Merritt Island tracking station of Columbia and UHF communications.
Columbia, Houston, UHF comm check.
Dallas. There's no.
Eight minutes on the touchdown clock for Columbia. Flight controllers continuing to stand by to regain communications with the spacecraft. Flight controllers standing by for communications through the Merritt Island tracking station, a ground tracking site in Florida. This is Mission Control Houston. Flight controllers are continuing to seek tracking data of Columbia. Touchdown clocks count down to 6 minutes to touchdown for the anticipated touchdown of Columbia at the Kennedy Space Center runway. Tracking data is being sought through the Merritt Island Tracking Station located near the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Communications with Columbia were lost at about 8 a.m. Central Time, about 10 minutes ago. This is Mission Control Houston. Flight controllers are continuing to stand by for communications from Columbia. The last communications with the spacecraft occurred about 8 a.m. Central Time as it was above Central Texas. Currently seeking communications or tracking data from the spacecraft through C-band radar and ground tracking sites located at the Merritt Island Tracking Station in Florida. This is Mission Control Houston. Flight controllers continue to seek tracking or communications with Columbia through Merritt Island Tracking Station. Last communications with Columbia was at 8 a.m. Central Time, approximately above Texas as it approached the Kennedy Space Center for its landing. Flight Director Leroy Kane is now instructing controllers to get out their contingency procedures and begin to follow those. The Flight Dynamics Officer reports no tracking data from the C-band radar at the Merritt Island tracking station has been reported of any objects. This is Mission Control Houston. Flight Director Leroy Kane is instructing controllers to follow contingency procedures. The last communications with the shuttle Columbia during its descent from orbit were at about 8 a.m. Central Time as it was descending through the atmosphere at an altitude of about 207,000 feet en route to the Kennedy Space Center, Florida, and a touchdown that was anticipated to occur about 2.5 minutes ago. Flight controllers received no further communications with the spacecraft after about 8 a.m. Central Time, and no further tracking data from the spacecraft was gained from C-band tracking radar at the Merritt Island tracking station in Florida. Contingency procedures in effect in mission control require all operators to conserve all their data and log books and notes that have been taken, that being instructed by Flight Director Leroy Kane, for controllers to begin following those steps and secure all information. Again, Flight Director Leroy Kane has declared a contingency. Flight controllers here in Mission Control are securing all their information, notes, and data gathered from the spacecraft. The last communications with Columbia at 8 a.m. Central Time as it was descending toward Florida for its landing. At that time, about 207,000 feet above central Texas, traveling approximately 12,500 miles per hour, 1,192 miles from its touchdown at Kennedy Space Center. Since 8 a.m., no communications were received with Columbia and no tracking data received through the Merritt Island tracking station. Those efforts made, the Flight Dynamics Officer reports no objects tracked through that tracking data.